The rivalry is further complicated by regional instability and the involvement of external powers. Conflicts in Syria and elsewhere have provided opportunities for both sides to assert influence while avoiding direct confrontation. At the same time, international actors have attempted to manage tensions through diplomacy, often with limited success. Ultimately, this rivalry is not simply about military power or territorial disputes. It reflects deeper questions about regional leadership, national identity, and long-term security. Understanding these roots is essential for any serious discussion about the risks of escalation and the possibilities for peace in the Middle East. The growing tensions across the Middle East cannot be understood by looking only at the direct relationship between Israel and Iran. A major factor shaping the current risk environment is the network of regional conflicts where influence, alliances, and military activity overlap, creating constant pressure points that can escalate rapidly. Much of this tension unfolds through indirect confrontation rather than open warfare. Iran has built relationships with political movements and armed groups across the region. And Gaza. These groups operate within fragile political systems, and ongoing conflicts allows regional rivalries to play out without formal declarations of war. Regional presence is a means of deterrence and influence, and that's one of the most sensitive arenas in this dynamic. Armed groups there possess significant military capabilities and operate close to Israel's northern border. Periodic exchanges of fire, threats, and military exercises raise the risk of miscalculation. Even limited incidents have the potential to draw in multiple actors, especially when political and state control and communication channels. Syria represents another critical front. Years of civil war have transformed the country into a space where regional and global powers operate simultaneously. Iran has used the conflict to strengthen its logistical routes and military presence, while Israel has conducted operations aimed at preventing long-term entrenchment. These actions often occur in a crowded environment involving other international forces, increasing the chance that unintended escalation could occur. Periodic flare-ups involving armed factions and Israeli forces are often localized, but they contribute to a broader atmosphere of instability. Each escalation reinforces mistrust and hardens positions, making regional de-escalation efforts more difficult. Iraq also plays a role, though less visibly. Political fragmentation and the presence of multiple armed groups aligned with different regional interests make it another arena where tensions can surface unexpectedly. Attacks on infrastructure or foreign-linked facilities can quickly take on wider geopolitical. These overlapping conflicts create a situation in which no single actor fully controls the outcome. A local incident, even one initially intended as a limited signal, can trigger broader reactions across borders. Communication gaps, domestic political pressures, and public opinion further complicate crisis management. The presence of external powers adds both stabilizing and destabilizing and While international actors often seek to prevent full-scale conflict, their military presence and political interests can also deepen rivalries. Diplomatic efforts exist, but they operate under constant strain from events on the ground. In such an environment, the issue of Iran's nuclear program has become one of the most sensitive and consequential factors shaping tensions in the Middle East. It is not simply a technical debate about energy or enrichment levels, but a deeply political and security-driven concern that influences how regional and global actors assess risk, deterrence, and stability. From Israel's perspective, the possibility of Iran developing nuclear weapons represents a fundamental threat. Israeli security doctrine has long emphasized prevention over reaction, shaped by historical experience and the belief that certain risks cannot be managed once they fully materialize. As a result, any progress in Iran's nuclear capabilities is closely monitored and often interpreted as a potential step toward a strategic imbalance that could alter the region's security landscape. Iran, however, presents a different narrative. Its leadership consistently maintains that the nuclear program is intended for peaceful purposes, including energy production, scientific advancement, and medical research. Iranian officials argue that international restrictions and sanctions have unfairly limited the country's technological sovereignty, and they frame nuclear development as a matter of national pride and self-determination. This contrast in narratives fuels mistrust, as each side questions the intentions behind the other's actions. International agreements have attempted to manage this tension by placing limits, inspections, and verification mechanisms on Iran's nuclear activities. These efforts were designed to create transparency and reduce the risk of miscalculation, while allowing Iran access to civilian nuclear technology. However, disagreements over compliance enforcement and sanctions relief have repeatedly undermined confidence in these arrangements. When diplomatic frameworks weaken or collapse, uncertainty grows, and with it, the likelihood of unilateral action. The nuclear issue also has broader regional implications. Other countries in the Middle East closely watch developments, concerned that a shift in the balance of power could encourage an arms race. Even the perception that nuclear thresholds are being approached can destabilize long-standing security assumptions and prompt defensive planning across the region. Global powers play a critical role in this dynamic. The United States and European nations have sought to balance non-proliferation goals with diplomatic engagement, while other international actors view the issue through the lens of strategic competition and regional influence. This multi-layered involvement makes consensus difficult and increases the political stakes of every development related to inspections, enrichment levels, or technological advances. What makes the nuclear question particularly dangerous is its symbolic weight. It represents not only a security concern, but also a test of international rules, trust, and credibility. Statements, policy shifts, or technical milestones are often interpreted as signals of intent, whether or not that intent exists. In such an environment, misinterpretation becomes a serious risk. The ongoing focus on nuclear concerns illustrates how unresolved issues can dominate regional relations for decades. Without sustained dialogue, transparency, and credible guarantees on all sides, the issue continues to cast a long shadow over efforts to reduce tension and promote stability. The involvement of major global powers has significantly shaped how tensions between Israel and Iran evolve, often determining whether crises escalate or are contained. These external actors are not merely observers. Are deeply embedded in the political, military, and diplomatic structures of the region with interests that extend far beyond the immediate rival. The United States has long played a central role, particularly in its security relationship with Israel. This partnership includes military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic support, all of which influence Israel's strategic calculations. At the same time, the United States has been a key participant in diplomatic efforts aimed at limiting Iran's nuclear activities and reducing regional instability. This dual role places it in a complex position, balancing deterrence with dialogue while managing domestic and international expectations. European nations also hold an important, though sometimes less visible, role. Many European governments emphasize diplomacy, economic engagement, and multilateral agreements as tools to reduce tension. Their focus often lies in preventing conflict that could disrupt energy supplies, trade routes, and regional stability that directly affect European security and economic interests. Europe's engagement reflects a belief that sustained dialogue and international frameworks can prevent confrontation, even when political trust is low. Russia and China approach the situation from different strategic perspectives. Russia's involvement in regional conflicts and its political relationships allow it to act as both a power broker and a stakeholder. Its engagement is often driven by a desire to maintain influence, protect its interests, and position itself as an alternative mediator. China, while less militarily involved, has growing economic and diplomatic interests in the region and tends to emphasize stability and non-interference, particularly where energy security and global trade are concerned. The presence of these global powers can have stabilizing effects. Diplomatic pressure, crisis communication, and international forums sometimes help slow escalation and create space for negotiation. Messages pass through intermediaries, emergency consultations, and behind-the-scenes diplomacy have, at various moments, helped prevent localized incidents from turning into broader conflicts. At the same time, external involvement can also complicate matters. Competing priorities among global actors may weaken unified responses or create mixed signals. When major powers disagree on strategy or policy, regional actors may feel emboldened to test limits, believing that international divisions reduce the risk of coordinated consequences. Economic tools further expand global influence. Sanctions, trade incentives, and financial restrictions are frequently used to shape behavior without direct military engagement. While these measures aim to apply pressure and encourage negotiation, they can also deepen resentment and harden political positions, making compromise more difficult over time. Global involvement reflects the reality that stability in the Middle East is closely tied to international security. Energy markets, migration flows, and geopolitical alliances mean that regional conflicts rarely remain contained. The actions and decisions of global powers therefore remain a decisive factor in whether tensions move toward confrontation or restraint float. The potential for a large-scale conflict between Israel and Iran carries consequences that extend far beyond military calculations or political strategy. The most immediate and lasting effects would be felt by ordinary people, both within the region and across the global community, making the human and economic dimensions central to any serious assessment of the situation. Civilians are always the most vulnerable in times of conflict. In a region already marked by displacement and humanitarian strain, a wider war would likely lead to significant loss of life, damage to infrastructure, and large-scale population movements. Cities, transportation networks, hospitals, and energy facilities could become targets or collateral damage, overwhelming emergency services and humanitarian organizations. When each side perceives the other's moves as threatening, the probability of preemptive or retaliatory action increases, and limited incidents can quickly spiral into broader conflicts. The interaction between these two approaches, diplomacy and military readiness, creates a delicate balance. Effective diplomacy relies on credibility and trust, yet the display of military strength can either support or undermine these efforts. If one side doubts the other's commitment to negotiation, it may feel compelled to act unilaterally, potentially igniting confrontation. Conversely, a demonstrated willingness to engage in dialogue while maintaining defensive capabilities can reduce tension and create openings for compromise. External actors influence this balance as well. International powers often encourage diplomatic engagement while maintaining alliances that reinforce deterrence. They provide frameworks for negotiation, monitor compliance with agreements, and sometimes offer guarantees that reduce perceived vulnerabilities. These interventions can stabilize the situation, but they can also complicate decision-making by introducing additional strategic considerations or creating mixed signals. Public perception and domestic politics further shape the choice between diplomacy and military action. Leaders must consider the expectations of their populations, the demands of political factions, and the pressures of national identity. Hardline rhetoric may appeal to domestic audiences, yet it can limit flexibility in negotiation and increase the stakes of confrontation. Similarly, demonstrating a commitment to peaceful solutions may face criticism if perceived as weakness, even when it serves long-term security interests. Ultimately, the region's stability depends on a careful calibration between dialogue and defense. Diplomacy provides the channels for reducing misunderstandings, establishing rules of engagement, and fostering international cooperation. Military readiness ensures that each side can protect itself while creating incentives to avoid unnecessary escalation. The challenge lies in maintaining this equilibrium in an environment characterized by historical mistrust, ongoing regional conflicts, and complex international involvement. Decisions taken in this context have far-reaching consequences, and navigating the line between preparation and provocation remains central to the pursuit of lasting peace and security in the Middle East. As we reflect on the complexities of the Middle East and the tensions between Israel and Iran, one thing becomes clear: the path forward is not determined solely by power, rhetoric, or short-term calculations. It is shaped by choices to pursue dialogue over escalation, understanding over mistrust, and cooperation over conflict. Every action, every decision, and every conversation has the potential to tip the balance toward stability or toward greater uncertainty. Our hope lies in the power of diplomacy, the courage of leaders to prioritize peace, and the engagement of the global community in fostering dialogue and trust. By staying informed, remaining compassionate, and supporting constructive solutions, we each play a part in shaping a safer and more stable future. Thank you for taking the time to join this conversation, to think critically, and to engage with these important issues. May your efforts, whether in understanding, discussion, or action, help to promote peace, insight, and hope. I wish you all the very best in your journey of learning, awareness, and contribution. Thank you, and good luck.